You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates.
Welcome into the Inside Slant here on the Sports Objective. Our look at around week, can't believe this, college football, the weekly games, and with us right now, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from China Grove, North Carolina. Give it up for Bubba Rosenbaum.
It's finally game week. This is what we've been waiting for. Obviously, a very limited schedule this week, just 7 games, but it's college football nonetheless.
You know, I can't believe how great our guest is, but he's so good that the man that was boycotting our show until he was found out that Rene is live, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Semenza.
Listen, guys, I was very comfortable on the couch. I was watching a 30 for 30 on Miami Hurricanes back in the day.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I lost all track of time. Dave said Rene's coming on. I'm like, all right, I'm going to hop on. Even though Rene's very mad at me tonight.
Listen, I told them I wasn't doing the show unless you were here, Matt. So lucky you logged on.
Man, he was getting ready to bail on us.
Brother. I appreciate that. Rene's going to be mad at me though, because I got full disclosure, Rene. I had to pick against the UMass.
Well, I know. Hey, did you guys notice though? The line is shooting down all of a sudden, right? Do you guys see that? It was about 9.5, 10, and it's at 6.5 tonight. So
watch out.
Yeah.
I'll be cheering for him. But hey, we'll see, buddy.
hey, stranger things have happened for sure. So, Rene, thanks for coming on tonight. Obviously, one of our favorite guests, and when we have you on, it's the summertime, but then also we always have you on around this time when I don't know about you guys, but it's been a great week at work. The only problem with this week is this week seems to be dragging on because I love college football. And will the games ever get here? I know the coaches are like, Rene, they're going, Dave, pump the brakes. We need a few extra days. They're never prepared enough. But for me, how about you? I don't know what it is about this season. I have my thoughts. I'll share them with you guys in a little bit. But I just really feel good about the season overall for college football.
I love this. I mean, this time of the year, obviously week 0, you guys touched on it. This is like an appetizer week, right? Just 7 games, just kind of, wet the whistle a little bit. And then, boy, when we get into week 1, 5 straight days of college football, that is the best. But, yeah, I just think football, and I know you guys feel like I do, and obviously I'm biased because I think it's the best sport out there by far. But it's the perfect, build up, right? You come through summer and you just know football's coming, particularly college football. And now, boom, week 0, it's here. And I just think it puts everyone in a good mood. Today was, week 0, I'm calling a high school game, a national high school game for ESPN. So I'm up in New Jersey and just, for me personally, it's just, okay, now I'm back in the rhythm. Travel, pack, say goodbye to the dogs, kiss the wife goodbye. I'm an empty nester. All my kids are in college. So to me, it's just getting back into that routine, and I love it, man. It just it keeps me young.
No question. And with the games coming up, I think mine that I'm watching out for the most would have to be, I'm going with the one we could talk about, of course, with Navy in Dublin against Notre Dame. It's just something about that game. It doesn't have, obviously, I know it's not as big as Army, Navy, but guys, that is a huge, huge game for me. That's the one coming up and on Saturday that I'm going to be watching and that I care about, I think, the most. What about you guys? That's my marquee game.
I'm definitely with you on that one. I mean, there are definitely some interesting storylines about that game. I think Sam Hartman is a big one.
Right.
Rene, I'm sure you have really high hopes for him as well. I mean, he's just such an awesome, dynamic player who can do it all and beat you with his arm and his feet. And then also on the Navy side, I'm intrigued by the new head coach, Newberry, who I think is just he was a fantastic defensive coordinator for many years. Rene, I kind of describe him as, like, in terms of what he does, he's a master of, pre-snap movement, and then the way he can disguise his coverages. I just think he's an outstanding coach. So I think there's some intriguing storylines there.
And he's definitely the right hire. And we got to go back to that. Ken Niumatalolo was there so long, and the team, the players, and I spoke to some of them. They wanted Brian Newberry, elevated to the head coach. So it's a seamless transition there. So that part's going to be good. I'm with you, Matt. That defense, I think, is going to be tough. The question is offense. Now, he brings in an offensive coordinator from Kennesaw State where he was. So the very interesting thing offensively is they're still going to run the option, but it's going to be a different variation of the option. They're going to stretch the field a little bit more. Is that 5, 6, 7 times a game? They're not going to go past crazy, but I think they'll tweak the option enough that it's going to cause some fits. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, and obviously Navy being in the American, we have a vested interest. Obviously, I know you guys do with ECU. So, yeah, I can't wait to see that one. And, yeah, Sam Hartman, I saw this week on social media, too. He bought every player on the team Beats headphones, I believe. So that's the crazy world we live in, right? It's not – usually you have to get an NFL signing bonus to do stuff like that. Now you can just do it with NIL money. So, hey, good for him, though. I'm sure his offensive linemen are going to block a little bit harder for him Saturday in Dublin.
Hey, Matt, it's like Rene, I don't know if you know this, but do you know who – I'm going to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
And, Matt, you can bail him out. It's okay because you're buddies.
All right.
Who is Matt Semenza's sleeper team for 2023? We might have already mentioned them.
Like sleeper nationally, sleeper in the conference?
Yeah,
nationally. Knowing Matt, it's a sleeper. Like it's not, give me a hint.
All right, I'll hint it for you. So when I use the term sleeper, but it's probably the wrong word that I use to describe them. I think it would be more a team that has an opportunity to make the playoff that a lot of people aren't talking about.
I mean, I'm going to throw one out there. It's probably not, but I'll tell you who mine is, Florida State.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I love speaking of a former coach of the American, Mike Norvell, my gosh, I am glad that those fans were patient, just like Matt's second favorite team, because he's married to a Florida Gator, Billy Napier. I hope Gator fans are patient with him. I really like that coach a lot. But Notre Dame is the answer.
Oh, it's Notre Dame. Okay.
Fighting Irish. And Matt, I haven't had a chance to tell you off air or on air, so I will now. I love your pick because you were talking about Sam Hartman. Man, to me, we always talk about quarterback play, and Sam Hartman is the real deal. They got a really good deal in Notre Dame. And I know that people always talk about they're kind of soft or they don't play the same type of football like the teams in the South. But there's going to be a year, and it might be this year, that they can sneak up on some folks. What do you think, Rene?
Yeah, I mean, I love Sam Hartman. The interesting dynamic there, and it's my understanding that Tommy Rees was kind of one of the reasons why he went to Notre Dame, and now Tommy Rees is at Alabama as the offensive coordinator. So we'll see if that, how that plays out. So there's so many, and you guys know this, more so than ever before. There are so many moving parts and so much going on in college football. It's kind of nuts, right? In this world we live in. I mean, even as an analyst, and I know you guys do it, sometimes you feel lost because you try to kind of keep your hand and your eyes out on everything that's happening, and you just can't do it with NIL and the way players move teams and coaches are moving and conferences are falling and teams are leaving conferences. I mean, it's crazy to try to keep your your hand on the pulse of everything. But yeah, Sam Hartman is a great addition, and I agree with you guys wholeheartedly. First and foremost, you better have a quarterback that can play and lead your team and be dynamic, because you're just in this day and age, you're just not going to win, in my opinion, with a subpar, mediocre type quarterback.
And by the way, Kenneth says, one of our new viewers and listeners, Rene, he says his pick is Penn State.
And that's not a sleeper for a lot of people. See, here's the thing, guys. I think there's the core, and I would actually kind of put Notre Dame in that core, Matt. There's that core 10, 12 teams where we kind of expect, right, the 4 to come out of there. What I hope that happens, like happened last year, is a team like TCU comes out of nowhere. Because to me, that makes it exciting, right?
Cool, yeah.
I don't know who the heck that team's going to be, but let's hope, it happens again. And I think if it does happen, I think the conference it's going to happen from again is the Big 12. Could it be a Kansas State? I think they have the ability to do it. A lot of, the irony about the Pac-12, and I know we'll probably touch on it, is this is probably their deepest, year in terms of how good their teams are. The problem is they're probably all going to beat each other up. I know I'm not the first person to say that. A lot of analysts have said that, but they all kind of play each other on the back end. So they may just, beat themselves up and play themselves out of it and not get someone in the CFP. But it would be pretty fitting, right? Since it looks like the conference is going to go, goodbye. That a Pac-12 team could get in there and win it all the last year. That would be something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that was one of my things. What about USC? Obviously, with Lincoln Riley. If Lincoln Riley, and we like him a lot, obviously, being from East Carolina and then going to Oklahoma and now USC. If the man could ever find a defense, they would be up there with Georgia and Alabama. They would definitely be in the top 4 in the playoff contention every year. What I have a hard time with is sentimentally you like Lincoln, but then you're going, man, you can't stop anybody.
Yeah, and that actually, let me ask you a question, Rene, about that. Because, just from an X's and O's standpoint, do you think with Lincoln's style of offense, the up-tempo, high-octane offense, your defense obviously doesn't get much rest. Do you think you can ultimately field a good defense with that system? Because it hasn't worked out yet for him.
There's no doubt that's an issue, Matt. That plays into it. I've talked to defensive players. I've talked to defensive coordinators about it, and they know, right? You're under the gun. You're on the 8 ball. Some of them, and I guess, and here's the counterpoint to that. If your offense is high octane enough, right, where you're going to score 40, 50 points, then as a defense, you can say, okay, we can bend, we can give up 28 points, 32 points. We just can't break where we just totally, get into a shootout where we're giving up 50 points. Defensive coordinators don't like that, of course, right? But when you have an offense like that, as a defensive coordinator, as a defensive unit, you got to tell yourself, okay, if we can get, 2 or 3 more stops than our opponent, we're going to be okay because our offense is good enough. We have to get those opportune stops. And so that kind of happened to a lot of defenses in the last few years because of this really fast tempo offenses. Here's another thing, guys, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet, and I love it as an analyst because I just think the games have gotten too long, is the rule change now. The clocks, and I've been a proponent of this for years. The clock will not stop now after a first down until it's under 2 minutes left in the first half and 2 minutes left in the game, which I love this rule. We just talked to Steve Shaw, who's the coordinator officials of all the officials in the NCAA. And they said the studies that they did was it's only going to cost teams, probably 8 to 10 plays a game. I thought it would be a little higher than that, but they think from all the studies they did 8 to 10. But I just love that fact. A lot of people probably don't realize that the reason the clock stopped after first downs is it was an antiquated rule. It was in there before the forward pass. So teams ran the ball every time. So you have to evolve. It took us to 2023, but we got there. But I think the flow is going to go better with the game. No more. I don't know if you guys, how much you looked at the rule changes. No more consecutive timeouts from a team, which I love. So the end of the game, end of the half, a team's got 3 timeouts. He can't burn all 3. He can only take 1. So I like that rule too. So, and that, just to get back to your point for the defense, I think the clock running more is going to give less offensive plays. And I think that kind of helps defenses out a little bit, right? Because defenses, with the way these offenses go that you talked about, Matt, and just kind of the way the rules are, it's kind of slanted towards the offense. So I think the clock running now, I think benefits the defense a little bit. But yeah, it's a great point that you have. It's tough when you're just that high octane offense. It just puts a lot of pressure on the defense.
Yeah, Rene,
Yeah.
I missed that about the no consecutive timeouts, but that will make the end of games a lot different because of the icing, the kicker situation.
Absolutely. So and that was one of the things was just keep the flow going, right? And especially at the end of the half too. Coach says, "Oh, I got 3 timeouts. Let's burn them all." So I think it's a good rule. So I think the games are going to be a little more expedited, which I love. And so I think it's going to be for an interesting college football season for sure.
Yeah, I thought we had talked about that, Bubba, but that rule to me, I guess I'm a traditionalist and I love that rule. But you know what? We're still going to have a great college football as long. My ultimate thing with college football, if they ever get rid of the kickoff, all that proposals I'm hearing about, I hope to God they never get rid of that. That's a big part to me with special teams and getting more players in, more experience is part of the game. And I know about the head-on collisions and concussions, but that's the one rule for me that is a breaking point for me. Not that I wouldn't watch college football, but I wouldn't have the same pizzazz. I wouldn't have the same enthusiasm for the game.
Well, I can tell you I've heard nothing of it at all, and even mentioned. So if that happens, it's probably a long way off for the college game.
Yeah, just real quick, just to jump in on that about the clock. That's done wonders for MLB this year. The pitch clock. I mean, Bubba, Randy, I don't know. Bubba, I brought him up to the Northeast this summer. How about that for a Yankees game? Dave couldn't make it, unfortunately, but we took it a Yankees game. And in the past, it probably would have been a 4.5 hour
right.
game. With the new pitch clock, we were out of there in like 3 hours. And it's just a better experience. I hope the same works out for college football in this case, that it's a positive thing. I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out, right?
And listen, for selfish reasons, I stand when I broadcast my games. Yeah, I mean, at halftime, I'll sit down a little bit, but I'm usually just too anxious, too pumped up. So I stand. And I mean, you get done with the game and you look and you're like, and you think the game went relatively good. And you're like, man, that was 3 hours and 42 minutes. And I'm thinking, and your legs are killing you. And I'm just thinking it's too long. And I've done 4-hour games. And so, as an analyst, when you get a Navy game or you get an Army or you get an Air Force game, you're like, yeah, 2.5 hours, baby. We're done in 2.5 hours. And so I think, really they want to keep them under 3.5 hours is ideally, right? So if you get a game, 3 hours and 15 minutes, that's phenomenal. You get a 3-hour game, phenomenal. And I think it's going to do that. I think it's going to cut it down, not a ton, but if you can take 15, 20 minutes off a game, I think that does wonders for it.
And they can't do it by not selling commercials. So that's another problem they have. you gotta pay the conferences somehow, right? That's right.
Yeah, Matt and I were sitting there at Yankee Stadium and 7:05 first pitch against the Cubs, and we look at each other. We're halfway home, and I think I looked at the scoreboard and the clock, and it was 7:50. I said, "We've played half a game in 45 minutes. What in the heck?"
Yeah, but like Matt said, though, it's done wonders for Major League Baseball because it's just a long, drawn-out game. But now guys aren't walking around the mound. They're not playing with the rosin bag. They got to get in there and they got to pitch. I love it.
But Dave brought up USC opening this weekend at the Coliseum, San Jose State. Brent Brennan's done a heck of a job with the Spartans.
Yep.
But, as you would expect, though, 30.5-point dogs there. And, what do you see from USC? Obviously, this weekend, I think, Matt, you took San Jose State to them in the points. But then, just the season on the whole, do you see USC putting themselves in the same situation they were last year where they were a win away from the playoff?
I mean, I do. I think they're going to be right in it. But like I talked about earlier, I mean, Washington's really good this year. Oregon's really good this year. So Utah once again. So again, I just think toward Ohio State, Oregon State, right? Who's the one school that's kind of getting shunned, right? With Washington State, Jonathan Smith's got a good team this year. So, I mean, that top half of the Pac-12 is really good. And I just think, Bubba, do they have a chance to come out of there? Of course they do. They're super talented, but they're going to earn it. If one of those schools from the Pac-12 gets out and makes it to the college football playoff, they will have earned it and deserve to be there wholeheartedly. It's going to be tough towards the end of that season, but obviously USC, when you have a quarterback like you do, and the talent on your team, obviously you have the ability to come out on the backside. But it's going to be tough towards the back end of that season. Obviously, they're not this opening game. It's a good little start for them. I'm with you. I've done a handful of San Jose State games in my day. Coach Brennan, great hire there. And he's done a tremendous job, but just this good little tune-up for USC in this one.
Right, no doubt. I mean, it's not if; it's a matter of, in your opinion, do you think they will? Because I was like you. I was looking at the second half of their schedule, and man, that's quite the gauntlet.
Yeah, I mean, I have to stick with what I said originally. I think they are going to cannibalize themselves. I really do. So, not to say they're not going to have a good season. Because they are, but I just think towards the end they're going to beat themselves up enough where they're going to keep someone from the Pac-12 going to the CFP playoff. The last year of 4.
Rennie, not to jump ahead to week 1 here, but we're talking about the Pac-12. You mentioned Utah. Awesome game to look forward to next week against the Gators. This time in Utah. I think Utah blew that game last year. They had two opportunities inside the 5-yard line. I think there was maybe a fumble and a pick, if I recall. What are your thoughts on that game? That's a fun.
I think it's one. I don't want to say have to win, but it's one. If you're a Pac-12 fan, if you're a Utah fan, you need to get this one right. You're at home. You get an SEC team. Yeah, it's Florida. Obviously, they're not the Florida of Swamp Kings that everyone's talking about, right? That's been on Netflix, but it's still Florida, and it's still an SEC team. You talked about kind of letting it slide last year. So this is one I think they got to get. But you got to be careful because it still is Florida. There's still SEC talent there. And the other thing is you haven't really heard – nationally, you haven't really heard a peep about Florida. There's no expectations there, right? You heard Graham Mertz wins the starting job. Billy Napier, gets ahead of that. So I don't know what to expect from Florida. I think we all know and expect Utah to be really good. The quarterback position a little banged up, but that's football. You got to play. But that's a great week 1 Thursday night game. I mean, to start off that week. So I'm looking forward to watching that one. I open up with the Hurricanes with Miami, so I'll be down. That's a Friday night game, the first. So I'll be down in Miami watching that one, either at the hotel bar or in my hotel room for sure.
No doubt. Really, with conference realignment obviously going on, I want to get your thoughts on the latest. Do you think Stanford and Cal go to the ACC, Oregon State, and Washington State it's going to be either Mountain West or an American?
Yeah. So, I'm kind of like you guys, right? Obviously, I'm an analyst, but I'm a fan too. So I kind of reach out to everyone I can to try to get like some inside knowledge, and I'm on Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it. And ultimately, whatever's going to happen needs to happen. Something is going to happen, guys. Those 4 schools in the Pac-12, let's not lose sight here. They do not have a schedule next year. There's no schedule for any 4 of those schools. The conference, for all intents and purposes, all the other schools are gone. There's no schedule. So they have to get into a conference or go independent, but the independent thing's not going to happen. So to answer your question, Dave, I do think ultimately, I think what's happening now is the presidents are meeting, they're talking, and let's be totally honest here. What happens is you go to the TV partners and you say, okay, if X, Y, and Z is added, what does this add to the contract? What happens? Okay, well, this is what we think our metrics say they're worth. But now we already know that these schools aren't going to take full shares. They're not even going to take, a lot of them aren't even going to take half shares. They're going to take partial shares, and they're going to work it in their contract. And then it's just a numbers game, right? The school presidents look and say, okay, is it worth our while? And then for those schools too, okay, the travel, right? got to look at the travel. Okay. Travel for football and basketball, yeah, in and of itself, that's fine. It's all the other sports, guys. And now you got to remember there's a ton of sports that maybe not a ton. There's sports in the Pac-12, Olympic sports that get played there that aren't necessarily played in the ACC. So you need to find those sports homes. So there's a lot of things going on in the background. With all of that said, I do ultimately think my gut feeling is Stanford and Cal end up in the ACC. And really, I think, one of the carrots out there, and Matt's a big Notre Dame guy, and you saw Notre Dame kind of, perking up, talking about it, like trying to say, hey, let him in. My thing to Notre Dame would be like, okay, why don't you go in at football? But that's one of the things, because they're really aligned with Stanford. I think the ACC knows that, right? So ultimately down the road, when Notre Dame has to go to a conference, and it's going to happen eventually, I think that gives the ACC another leg up for them to come in football. So I think that plays into it. So ultimately, my gut is that those two do become part of the ACC. Everything I'm hearing is SMU maybe going too. I don't think SMU would have been one of this is, and this is totally just my opinion, just looking at it from the outside. I don't necessarily think SMU would have been one of the picks to the ACC, but lo and behold, the ACC or the SMU goes, we won't take TV money for 5 years. I mean, when you lay that out to a conference, right? And it's incredible, right? What's going on? So it would not surprise me one bit if we woke up tomorrow and Stanford and Cal get invited to ACC and go, and ultimately SMU goes as well. Now, it could just be the two, and SMU could stay. Now, to your other question, Oregon State and Washington State need to find a home, and it's very simple. It's either the Mountain West or the American. It's one of the two. I think the American and the Mountain West are both going to their TV partners. We know the American right now is $7 and change per school. It goes up a little bit. The money goes up a little bit because of the bowl game. Obviously, Tulane got a New Year's Six bowl win. And I think the Mountain West is around 4.5 a school. So the advantage obviously is there with the American. Same thing, you go to your partners and say, if we add Oregon State and Washington State, what does that do? And then those two schools, the ball's in their court because they have to get into a conference somewhere. And we'll see what they do.
What about it? We're going to put you on the spot here. What
Go
about
ahead.
East Carolina? What do we have to do? The only thing I was telling people is we have to win and win a lot of games. And that, it's frustrating because we're in the ACC and an SMU gets in before us is really a slap in the face to those of us that are, we're very close to a lot of ACC schools. When you look at the geographic, I know geographic footprint doesn't mean anything, but like I was saying last night on our show, we literally, every time we play at ACC school, we go to them, they come to us. It's a sellout.
Sure. Well, and the thing is, and you guys know this now, everything's national. So when you're a conference, you ultimately say, okay, what market can I get in, right, to enhance us? And it helps recruiting. Well, SMU is right in the heart of Dallas, right? So I'm sure that plays a huge part into it. I know it plays a huge part into it. So, unfortunately, the fact that you guys are in Greenville, right in ACC country, ultimately doesn't matter because you answered your own question because you're already in ACC country. Right. Listen, ECU just has to keep winning. So there's and I know Matt loves stirring the pot on Twitter. I love it. I sit back and read all the tweets and posts, and I just love listening to people. And then I'll be like, "Oh, look at this guy," and then I'll look, and I'm like, "The guy's got 7 followers, and he's going after Matt." I'm
glad you like it. I'm glad you find it entertaining. I can get carried away sometimes.
Yeah, you gotta watch yourself. In the position I'm in, I stay off. I just read. But there's some notions out there that eventually, 64 schools or 80 schools will break off, right? And they'll go alone. Here's the problem, guys, okay? And no one's really talking about this, and I don't think people realize it. The same issue, okay? The same issue that's causing this conference realignment, okay? That same issue will prevent 64, 70, or 80 schools from breaking off. And that's the TV money. Because right now, the TV money is divided, right, from different networks into different conferences, right? It's broken up into conferences, right? We know that. We have, the Big Ten and the SEC have moved themselves away, and that's what's taking off the ACC. And then, the Big 12 jumped in there ahead of the Pac-12. The Pac-12 basically has imploded. We know that. But for 64 teams, let's say, to say, okay, we're just going to break off, well, all those conferences already have, TV contracts and granted rights. It's just, you just can't break off and then say us 64 are going to do one. It's not feasible right now. I mean, maybe down the road, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. So, as I look at it as an ECU fan, I honestly, truly believe the American is in a really good spot. It's a good conference. It's getting good money. And if Mike Oresco can add an Oregon State and a Washington State, that would be like kudos to him in the conference. And if he doesn't, they'll go with what they got. And I know, you guys know the 6 schools they added. Not a lot of people know those schools. And I made this point before. I probably made it on this show. Conference USA, and you guys know this, did not have a good TV deal. You never saw any of those schools unless they were a visiting team. Now, Conference USA went ahead and did a TV deal. Matter of fact, ESPN, they have a deal with ESPN. So starting in about week 4, you're going to see a Conference USA game of the week every Wednesday. I think every Wednesday night on ESPN. And then they I think ESPN, I think CBS. So they're back linear, which is going to help them out tremendously. But the 6 schools that got added after this year and the exposure they're going to get from the ESPN deal with the American, you'll know those 6 schools easily around the nation. And obviously, I think UTSA, watch out for them because I really think they have the ability to step in this first year and win the American. But we'll see. That's why I love college football, because you just never know.
Hey, Rennie, it's Kyle. Better
Hey,
late than never.
I told you, Rennie.
You told me what? That I was going to be late?
Yeah, I told him. Matt, the only reason Matt came on is because Rennie threatened to fire him, and Matt came on, and then I said, Kyle will be on. He'll be late, and he'll be on later on.
Yeah, well, that's you nailed it. I talking about conference expansion, following it closely, obviously, like everybody else. Everything I'm reading really is pointing to Cal and Stanford getting that ACC invite tomorrow. I'm not sure about SMU. I don't know what you're hearing. I really believe if SMU doesn't get in, I think Oregon State, Washington State will choose the American over the Mountain West if SMU is part of the equation with the American. I also, and there are a lot of rumors I'm hearing and speculation, if we get those 2, then the next 2 targets would be Boise and San Diego State with a 2026 start date because of their media rights deal currently with the Mountain West and the huge exit fee. Kudos to the Mountain West for having a strong exit fee. So I hope it happens. It would be nice, we ain't going to get our flowers. We ain't never going to get our flowers. That just can't never happen. But it would be nice not to get the manure for once. And if we can come out of this thing with SMU and not lose anybody, and then gain Oregon State, Washington State, and then potentially Boise, San Diego State later, it would be great. Also, my point, to see if you agree with this, about Oregon State and Washington State, if they ever want to get in a Power 5 conference again, if they play in the Mountain West on FS1 and CBS Sports Network and getting, exposure in Colorado, Wyoming, in markets they are, just Western markets, I don't think it's going to work. I think if they ever want to get back in a Power 5 conference, they're going to have to come to the American, get East Coast exposure, continue playing on ESPN, get more money, despite maybe a little bit of increased travel, cost. But the path has been shown. Yeah, in the past, a decade ago, TCU and Utah made it from the Mountain West to the Big 12, and to the Pac-12 at the time, Utah. But that hasn't happened in years. The path here recently to make it to the Power 5 has been through the American with UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and now SMU is being courted to potentially do it. So I see if you agree.
I can't believe I'm going to say this. I agree with you almost 100%, Kyle, and I do.
Wow.
So
I can believe it, Randy. You're a smart man.
I think the reason I love SMU. I love Rhett Lashley. I did 2 or 3 SMU games last year. I love their facilities. They're in the heart of Dallas. I mean, they have a lot going for them. I think the reason they're in this, one, there's been a lot of politicking, right? We know that. High-profile people from these universities have made calls. We know that, right?
They got a lot of money, and they can pay players legally now.
That's the thing. I mean, the rumor out there is that they're willing to go 5 years without any TV money. That's why that's the biggest.
7, Rennie.
7. There you go. Yeah. I mean, so how do you not, right? How do you not listen to that if you're the ACC? You have to. So we'll see what happens. But I agree with you on the other stuff. I full disclosure, I touched base with Mike Oresco. You guys know I'm a big Mike Oresco fan. Yep. He knows what he's doing. He's worked really hard to build the conference, keep the conference together. Remember, he was the commissioner of the Big East when everything went to crap back then. So he was one of the first commissioners that's gone through it. So he knows. Former TV exec, he knows. But I agree with you. If the American, if Stanford and Cal go to the ACC and the American can hold on to SMU and add Oregon State and Washington State, they are in a tremendous position. And I do agree with you. I think if you're Washington State and Oregon State, you say to yourself, let's broaden our footprint. And the travel's an issue, but I also know that these conferences are working real hard with these schools that are out west. If they do come to a conference where the travel is exorbitant than they're used to, there'll be money funneled that way specifically for travel. And that's a way to give those schools more money and incentive. Yeah. So you're not saying you're giving them more money than the other schools. You're just helping them with the travel. I know that's been a consideration and that's going to happen. But if you're Oregon State and Washington State, broaden your footprint. Your recruiting base, you're going to be able to go to Florida. You're going to be able to go to the Northeast. And listen, the travel really isn't as crazy as you think, right?
It's not. It's
four schools in Texas.
Half the schools are in Texas.
4 schools in Texas. You got a school in Oklahoma.
Yep.
You got Memphis.
Wichita.
I mean, you could. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, even for football, if you wanted to do divisions, you could do a West Division, and travel's not that bad. So there's things you could do, although they probably wouldn't. They'll probably do kind of what the ACC does. Your top, because you want your top 2 teams in the conference championship, but you kind of do that rotating thing
do
where
divisions for everything but football.
Yeah, and you play your 3 core games a year or 4 core games, however you do it. But I do agree with you. I'm not talking out of school here when we know, because it's all public record, the money definitely will be better in the American with that TV deal. We know that.
Do you think ESPN would be willing to, if we keep SMU, obviously now they've shown they have more value than previously thought. We bring in Oregon State and Washington State. Do you think ESPN would be willing to get in the room with Oresco and give us a little bump?
So this is just my opinion. I know I work for ESPN. My opinion, no inside knowledge whatsoever. Yes, I do, because I think what you have to do is you say, okay, this is what we're going to add. Where does the value add? And you guys didn't. I know you guys know this, but we didn't even talk about it. You bring in 2, and I think this, again, my opinion, I think this is why Fox was so hungry with the Big Ten in terms of, okay, we're going to get Washington and we're going to get Oregon, is you bring in some West Coast teams, all of a sudden you have that night, that window, right? That late game window, which, listen, we all watch that window, whether we're laying in bed at 10:30 at night and a game's kicking off in the West Coast, or we stay up and watch it. And the funny thing is, guys, it really doesn't matter who's in those matchups. ESPN 2, this game's on. We watch those games, right?
If it's a close game, I'm watching it.
Yeah, and so the argument was, and I think that's what kind of hurt Apple and some of the direct to consumer, because really for those late games, you're really, unless you're a fan of that school, you're not going out of your way to watch that game digitally. You're not getting a subscription. But if it's on your cable at 10:30 at night or 11 o'clock and it's a good game, you're going to watch that damn thing. And next thing you know, it's like it's 2:30 in the morning. There's 2 minutes left in this game, but it's a great game. I can't go to sleep. So you add those 2 West Coast schools, you got all the time zones in there, right?
Yep.
If you're the American. And I don't know anything about programming, but I would have to believe that is a value, right? So I do think Mike Oresco, if you could add those schools, I do think he could renegotiate and make a better deal. The sad thing for the two Pac-12 schools is they're never going to get what they were going to get. And we have all seen the reports. We've seen what the offer was. We know what they countered at, and now we know what happened. So
yeah, I mean, they
sad.
told. Are you talking about going back to the ESPN deal?
Yeah, if the reports are correct, right?
The ESPN offered them $30,000 or $30 million per school, and they wanted $50 million per school.
That's crazy. They should have taken that.
Yeah, and that was a year ago.
And then look what happened right after that. Brett Yormark said, "I'm going to cut the line. I'm going to go ahead and negotiate ahead of time before my contract's up," and he gets his schools that $31 million. And the Big 12 is, the Big 12. I understand the ACC's issue because the Big 10 and the SEC are making so much money, but hey, I mean, there's nothing you can do. Everyone kind of scoffs at the ACC. Their contract goes up every year, okay? When you add in the bowl money and everything else, I mean, those schools are still making $37-38 million a year when it's all said and done. It's nothing to sneeze about. I get it. It's not $60 and $70 million. I get that. But they're still strong the number 3 conference in the Big 12 sitting there at $31 million. And so they're okay. And so now everyone else is kind of jockeying for that position. But to get back to your question, Kyle, I do think Mike Oresco, if he could add those 2 schools, can get more money for his conference and position himself real well. Now, as far as what happens with Mountain West down the road, who knows? But I can tell you the American will be sitting in a good position if they can add those 2 schools.
We all know San Diego State would give their firstborn child to get out of the Mountain West. So
they were almost out prematurely, and it would have hurt them. So everything happens for a reason.
I just I look at the Apple money, and I've heard anywhere that it was going to be between 18 and 21 million per school. So if ESPN could get this thing up to 10 to 12 million per school, we're sitting at 7 to 9 million now. And that would be pretty close.
Let's not forget when Mike Oresco was the commissioner of the Big East, right? Mm-hmm. San Diego State was going to the Big East, and Boise State was as well.
Correct.
So, and that was a while ago. So there's players in play here. Yep. There's things in play here that kind of history repeats itself, right? Maybe it doesn't happen the first time around. So we shall see.
I'm excited. I'm very excited about what's going to happen. But let's go back to something that's more imminent that we know that's definitely going to happen, and that is week 0. Bubba, I know there's more matchups. You have that Ohio and San Diego. We were talking about the Aztecs.
Good game.
Yep.
Yeah, and San Diego State's opening Snapdragon Stadium. I'm very interested to see that. Have looked at it some during the construction process, but Rene, what do you think about that matchup? Some people think that will be perhaps the most competitive or one of the most competitive.
The line's 2.5. Ohio is always seems to be. It doesn't matter what year, who's coaching. Ohio is always competitive. I've done a bunch of Bobcat games, and I think that is going to be a fun matchup. I don't know the intricacies of both those teams, but I do know both those programs are playing good football. They're playing good football at the right time, and I'm with you, Bub. I can't wait to see that new stadium, new excitement out there at San Diego State. But that's a game definitely to watch this opening week 0.
In fact, especially when you have a team in the MAC that's really good, like Ohio, a team in the Mountain West. I think San Diego State is very underrated. And like Bubba said, I forgot about that, Bubba, the new stadium opening up. We're all like stadium nerds. I don't know really if you are, but we love our stadiums. And I'd forgotten all about that. For some reason, Bubba, I was thinking that it was a year out. I didn't realize it was going to go ahead and open up.
And something else of note, as you look at these games as a whole, I think out of the 7 games, you have at least 4 of the 7 that have over-unders of less than 50.
Oh. I thought you were going with the Conference USA tie-in. About half of them are Conference USA schools playing at them.
That's true as well. But, on that note, let's head to Jacksonville, Alabama. Rich Rod and the Gamecocks making that transition to FBS, and they're hosting the UTEP Miners. UTEP is the slight, 1.5 point favorite last I saw.
Really? Just 1.5 point? That is surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, and Rich Rod, they were good last year. Another year under his belt, more scholarships to work with, and yeah, so that's a fascinating game right there, just out of the bat for Jacksonville State, right? To get a chance to take on UTEP, and so yeah, 1.5. That kind of surprises me as well, but yeah, another interesting one to watch.
By the way, guys,
because it was even a few days ago, so now it's moved, and I like Jacksonville State in that game. They have a lot. I think they have 16 starters coming back, if my memory serves me right.
Wow!
In addition to the quarterback, and Rich Rod, I think he's gonna have them ready to go. So that's one of my upset specials for the.
And you guys, with the portal too. I mean, the talent discrepancy, it just isn't what it used to be. 5-10 years ago. I mean, you can add talent to a team quickly.
Yeah, Dana Holgerson in year number, I believe 4 at UTEP, maybe 5. He's had one really good season there. The rest have been very subpar. If he drops in the new version, Conference USA, whatever version we're on now, Conference USA, if they lose to Jacksonville State out the gates, he's probably on the hot seat.
Could be.
Guys, one of the things I was reading an article real quick, going back about the Pac-12 really fast. You mentioned FBS, and it triggered a memory. Something I was going to say. I didn't realize this; I'd forgotten it. But in order for those teams to stay FBS with only 4, when it's less than 8, you only have 2 years to get it done without a TV contract. I was going to add that about the Pac-12. I know it's probably a moot point, but we were talking earlier about Oregon State and Washington State. They want to keep the Pac-12 brand. I get it, but you could lose your FBS status if they
want to merge with the Mountain West or the American and then call it the Pac-12. I'm all for that.
I'm agree with that. I'm hoping that we could get up to maybe 15 million. I heard if potentially 15 million if we could get those teams, and that's I think even without Stanford and Cal.
I don't think we'll get that much, but it'll be more.
If it puts us in a better financial situation, fellas, call it whatever the hell you want. The Pac-12, I mean, whatever it is, we're
Pac American.
I just don't see.
I actually like that idea, the Pac American. I thought some range.
Well, how about the Pacific American Conference, and the acronym would still be PAC?
Yeah, absolutely. But
that's what I thought too, Kyle.
I just don't think Washington State and Oregon State have much bargaining. I mean, I know you want them, both the American and the Mountain West, but for crying out loud, it's Washington State and Oregon State. I mean, I don't see them in the position with no media rights deal to be telling anybody anything. They're either going to go to the American. If Stanford and Cal go, those two are either going to the American or the Mountain West. Now, I do think the Mountain West schools might be willing to fold that conference and all merge and call themselves the Pac-12, but I just, and another thing that, I want to get Randy's opinion on this. We talked about Oresco and the American. The Pac-12, the Mountain West commissioner, she's in her first year. Craig Thompson, I guess, finally stepped down. And she came from the Pac-12. So she's going to have some familiarity with Oregon State, Washington State.
Yeah, no doubt. I've heard great things about her. I don't know her personally. And, excuse me, all these conference commissioners, they're all trying to do what's best for their conference, right? But then the schools and the school presidents and the ADs, they're all trying to do what's best for their universities. And so, it's just kind of this, just weird position we're in. I had a conversation with Mike Oresco when I was in Dallas, and, and he said it too. He goes, listen, this is the climate we're in. It's not personal. He goes, it wasn't personal with me, with UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, and they weren't personal back. It was, you understand, you're amicable. Yeah. He goes, you just do what you have to do. He goes, and then he's friends with the Conference USA commissioner. And he goes, and we ended up taking 6 of their schools. So he's like, and they understand. I mean, it's a nature of the beast, right? Everyone's just trying to do what's best for their conference, their university. And so I'm fascinated though, but I'm with you, Kyle. I think there's a lot of upside to Washington State and Oregon State coming into the American, but we'll see.
Yeah, and we'll. I don't know how much more we want to talk about this versus week 0 games, but I will say this.
Well, we got to talk about UMass and New Mexico State.
Will,
I mean, I can't get off the call without saying.
We definitely will, but I do want to say this. got off. You made me lose my train of thought or anything. So,
realignment. You're talking about realignment.
I know.
Conferences.
Now it has totally escaped my brain. It was a good point too, but it's gone now. Maybe it'll come back. We'll move on to New Mexico State and UMass, and that should be another good game. And I believe that's a primetime ESPN game.
7:00. Yeah, there it is on the screen. ESPN. And Rene, are you going with the Minutemen or New Mexico State? I'm putting you on the spot.
So I did New Mexico State's last game. I did them in the Quick Lane Bowl where they won. They beat Bowling Green. So they ended up with 7 wins. So the funny thing is, the whole time I'm prepping for New Mexico State in that bowl game and watching them, I'm thinking that is what UMass can do. So New Mexico State, new coach and Jerry Kill. You guys know Jerry Kill. Was at Minnesota for a long time, and he goes there and he turns it around. They get to a bowl game because obviously that's what UMass's goal is, and obviously New Mexico State was independent. They're in the Conference USA now, so it's kind of the blueprint that the Minutemen are kind of looking at. I'm a homer. I like UMass in this game. I do. Not only they're on E1, the national game week 0, Kyle. They're on E1. Week 1 at Auburn too. So if you're UMass, if you can get this win, if you can go on the road, and it's not going to be easy. If you can go on the road and get this win, all of a sudden everyone goes, "Holy cow!" Then you go to Auburn. No one expects you to win that game. You're playing with house money. I think Auburn's paying about $2.1 million for that game. Speaking of money, so then you get some money and bring it back to your athletic department, and then you get ready for your home opener against Miami of Ohio. So it's a really important game for UMass. I don't want to say it's a must win because it's the first game of the season, but it almost feels like a must-win. Donnie Brown is a good coach. He's a tough, hard-nosed coach. To Matt's point, we're talking about offenses, kind of ruling the roost. It's opposite with Donnie Brown. That's old school. His defenses are dominant. UMass's problem is they couldn't score any points. Well, he went and hit the portal hard. Their QB1 is a kid named Tyson Pumachan. He was a 4-star. You guys might remember the name. He was a 4-star. He went to Clemson. Didn't work out at Clemson. He went to Georgia Tech, and now he ends up at UMass. The kid is really a good quarterback. And you have to – we talked about it with Sam Hartman. You need to have a quarterback in position first and foremost before anything else. He got a lot of skill players in the portal. Hopefully they gel. And then his defense, he probably has legitimately 15 or 20 guys on that roster that were on Power 5 programs. So say what you want. Say they were at Arizona, Michigan – they should be able to play. So I think it's going to be a really good game. And, the spread, you guys have 7. I saw 6.5 today. So I think it's going to be a good game. And I think if UMass can score points, I think they can win the game. For UMass, it comes down to their interior line play offensively. They had issues at offensive line play. If that offensive line can be improved, their defensive line, I think, is going to be good. They have a really good chance. New Mexico State lost some people up front. So something to watch in that game. But obviously, I'm going to be on the air. Murphy's Law, right? I'm going to be on ESPN2 at the same time, opposite of that game, calling a phenomenal national high school game. But I'll have my phone out. I'll be cheating, watching at the same time. Well, maybe not the same time, during timeouts.
Yeah, Randy, I'll be pulling for you, buddy. I have to, support the Northeast teams when I can. So
thank you, Matt.
Even though I picked against you, brother.
That's okay. Listen, you go with your heart for emotions, but you got to try to go with your head when you're gambling. I get that.
Hey, Rene, he's also a fan of UConn and Charlotte. Those are his 2 schools.
Listen. Hey, hold on. I know you guys don't like Charlotte. I'm a Biff Poggi fan, man. The guy sold me. I don't care if you guys don't like him or not. I think he's a breath of fresh air. We'll see.
I have determined Biff Poggi is either a genius or a lunatic. I'm not sure.
Hey, I love it. Right, we're gonna find out. Right?
I got a feeling he'll either win 8 games in his first year or he'll be fired after 2 years. There's gonna be no in between.
Listen, 7 new coaches. Not new coaches, but 7 new coaches to programs in the American. I think that's a great storyline as well. They're all. Name people. Tom Herman down at FAU. I can't wait to see what he does. That's kind of a sleeping giant sitting down there. Trent Dilfer at UAB, very outspoken, but Biff Poggi. I like him. So it's going to be. It's regardless, guys. It's going to be a fun year in college football, and it's going to be a fun year in the American, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no
Randy,
doubt. Go ahead, man. I have my thought that I wanted to bring up earlier that slipped my mind, and it goes back to conference realignment, and I'll mention this, and then we'll get back on subject. But we were talking about, Oregon State, Washington State choosing the American or the Mountain West. I also think ESPN and Fox are going to have a lot to say about that. I think whoever wants to up the contracts the most for the Mountain West and the American, be it ESPN or Fox, will probably end up with Oregon State and Washington State.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But we all know, and I don't know if it makes a difference or not. The American already has a jump, head start.
Yeah,
They're already making more financially, already making more money. And again, I think the programs in the American and the geography. Yes, there's some travel, but I just think
it works enough.
Well, I think it opens horizons for your recruiting, not just athletic recruiting, but just recruiting for your universities in total, right? If you can show your brand in Florida and bring your brand to Texas and the East Coast and the Carolinas, right? I just think it does wonders for your brand, for your university in total. So that I'm sure that plays into the process as well with these two universities, but we'll see. We all could be dead wrong tomorrow or next week. I'm going to stand by this. I think within the next week to 2 weeks, I don't even think 2 weeks, within the next week, I think we're going to know. I think there's going to be some finality here in the next week, maybe tomorrow.
Rene, the school to watch out for, they don't have enough votes right now. They're down to one. If they can get NC State, they got to flip. NC State is the school. And what if NC State continues to say no?
Well, I mean, that's
I think they rebuild the Pac-12.
That's the issue. Then they have to go back and build the Pac-12. And I know Kyle said we were going to get off this, but here's the problem.
Oh, I'm going to talk about it all night. I thought
where I'm looking at it, where do you build the Pac-12 up again? What schools, right? You have to pillage the American and you have to pillage the Mountain West again. We know the Mountain West schools aren't leaving this year. It's $34 million. So nothing's going to happen. It's a messy situation.
The equity for the American with 24 months notice is $10 million, but with 12 months notice is $20 million. With less than 12 months notice, I don't know what it is, but there's penalties.
Correct.
There is a rumor that Tulane, SMU, Memphis, and South Florida have told Stanford and Cal and Washington and Oregon State that if Stanford and Cal don't get the ACC, that those four would come and just pay the fees to leave. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to that because, when you got people like OSU Beaver, by the way, let's call out OSU Beaver on Twitter for what he is, a lying piece of crap who's just trying to get clicks and people to his Twitter handle. So screw you, OSU Beaver. And another guy wants to say a big screw you too. And even though he's legitimate media, I think he posted a bunch of BS. And when you cancel on us and then we catch you doing another podcast at the same time, when you had a family emergency, Jim Williams. So I'll give you the big bird too.
Hey, Rene, we're on the Paul Feinbaum show now.
Well, here's the other thing too. I mean, but that's why those four schools hired Oliver Luck, right? Because ultimately, all these, and I'm sure it's probably like those four schools. Those four schools, but those schools individually with Oliver Luck, it's probably like a draft war room, right? Hey, if these schools get at it, what do you think we can get from these networks? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's about. So, it's going to be fascinating.
Depending on who you ask, Rene. I've read that he's working for all four. Then I've also read that he's only working for Oregon State and Washington State.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't know either. I have no idea. I'm with you, Kyle. You kind of see what's on Twitter. You kind of believe none of it, maybe a little of it. We'll know when we know, So one thing's for certain, though. Something's going to happen. So we'll know.
You're starting to get to the point now, as it's been going on for a few weeks, where you can read between the lines of what's BS and what's real and what has legs and what doesn't.
And I don't know if you were on the call earlier, Kyle, and I made the point. Something's happening because those four schools do not have a schedule next year. There's no schedule. So they have to make a move and relatively quick. And really, the only way to fill your schedule out the way it needs to be filled out is to join a conference.
Exactly.
You're not doing it independent late in the game. You're just not.
I think we'll know about Cal and Stanford and SMU tomorrow, and then probably the other two by early next week.
And I actually told you guys a few weeks back when the ACC originally turned down Cal and Stanford, the politicians would get involved. I just had a feeling once the
agreed.
And you have some very powerful people you're talking about that reportedly have gotten involved. People like Condoleezza Rice. There's even a rumor that George Bush Jr. got involved. Tiger Woods. I mean, you're talking about people with major influence, major voice. That's why, and we know how this country is. Once politics get involved in something, forget it. It's over. That's why I agree. I think within the next 48 hours, I think most likely you're going to hear Cal and Stanford to the ACC. And, personally, I don't think Cal brings very much value, but they have to have a travel partner. So it's probably going to go down that way.
Well, what if it ends up being Stanford and SMU and Cal gets left out?
You just never know. But getting back to the point, these schools, and not only the schools, these conferences, they don't want this, just mess. They just don't want it out there, right? They want it done and over with. They don't want to go into a season not knowing what their future holds. So that's why it's going to get done one way or the other somewhere.
No, I agree. And it's, we talk about all the politicians and athletes with Tiger Woods getting involved, and I don't blame them. When all this started and I first started hearing SMU to the ACC, the first thing I said was that our administration needed to contact our governor, Roy Cooper, and tell North Carolina and North Carolina State, as state-funded institutions, if the ACC was going to add anybody from the American, then North Carolina and North Carolina State could not vote yes unless East Carolina was included. Now, I will tell you, those were 2 of the 4 no votes, so maybe they did that. And they may keep voting no, because I guarantee you they're not going to put East Carolina in the ACC. So it won't get us in, but it'll keep SMU out. The other thing that I suggested, and Tiger Woods getting involved, I suggested we have a very famous golfer by the name of,
Harold Varner III.
Harold Varner III, HV3, who's African American. Well, that's a very limited pool of professional golfers that are African American, and got to figure he's friends with Tiger Woods. And I suggested, why don't we have Harold reach out to Tiger? This is when we thought Stanford was going to rebuild the Pac-12, and I said, why don't we have Harold reach out to Tiger and see if he can put in a good word for East Carolina. You resolve all resources in these situations, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to – it's going to be fascinating, to say the least. It used to be an off-season. There's no off-season now in college football. It's 24/7, 365, but that's why we love it. What about any more games, Bubba? I know that we kept Rene.
Have y'all talked to FIU, Louisiana Tech?
Not yet.
That's where I was headed now. Down to Ruston, Louisiana. Second year of Sonny Cumbie. Obviously, they parted ways with Skip Holtz after a 3-9 year, but many close calls in that season. Last year, they as well went 3-9, lost a couple games in overtime. Also got blown out a considerable amount. So
what's the line, Bubba?
Very interesting game there. Is La Tech by 11.5. So last year that was one of FIU's 4 wins. Obviously,
give me FIU with the points.
So
what's the line again, Bubba?
11.5.
11.5. Coach McIntyre.
11.5.
Coach McIntyre is a good coach down there at FIU, and it's not an easy place, right? But you're in Florida, and you're in Miami. You're going to get some recruits. You're going to get talent on that team. You just got to coach them up. So yeah, watch out for FIU.
11.5 seems particularly.
That seems a lot.
They must have lost a lot off that team because
and I don't know. We talked about this earlier too, Kyle. I as an analyst, I almost feel lost this year because you're trying to keep your hand on the pulse of everything, and it's impossible to keep track of what quarterback went where, what coach went where. I mean, it's actually crazy.
Yeah, and right now is when you should be trying to catch up. But conference expansion's got everybody's attention.
Listen, I've been on with you guys over an hour, and I didn't even I need some personal information. Is Mason Garcia going to be the starter for ECU?
Yes.
Has he been named QB1?
Yes.
Okay.
He has not been named.
He was named. Mike Houston said at the luncheon that he was going to start against Michigan.
Yeah, he's starting.
Okay.
Yeah, he's starting. The deal is, Rene, that
unless I was lied to by multiple people, Bubba.
No, he did say that. I was there.
Well, I hadn't heard anything about the luncheon, but I just knew that what I had heard in press conferences, he had not come out and said that. I fully agree, but I just had not heard it definitively.
Yeah, he said it at the luncheon that he was going to start, but I do expect we'll see him and Flynn both play.
Yeah, Flynn has had a really good spring game, and he had a really good summer, and then he had a great fall camp. So out of respect to Flynn, you don't just say, well, Garcia, you have the job, when the guy has been his game is really the difference. He has really improved, and Mason has too, but I think the people were really surprised about how much Flynn improved. He learned, basically, he knows the playbook extremely well, and so does Mason, because you have a kid like Holton Ahlers that's there for 10 years. So not really, it's more like 5, but Mason, the fact that he stayed, a lot of people thought he was going to leave. He's a 4-star guy. Flynn is a guy that puts a lot of work in and has talent too. I think the difference, though, is, Rene, that when you look at Mason Garcia, he's a dual threat. People don't talk about that enough, that he's similar with, not the same as Ahlers, but I think his athleticism is going to really shock
I think he's
people.
actually more similar to David Garrard. If you want to compare him to another Pirate quarterback, he's a big kid who can run. He's got speed, and he's got a cannon. He's got all the physical attributes to be an SEC quarterback. The question is how is his football acuity? How is his awareness? How is he between the ears? And that's where Flynn does have it. Flynn does not have the athletic ability that Garcia has, but he's extremely intelligent. I think Garcia will end up being the quarterback over time, but I got a feeling early in the year we're going to see them both.
Flynn is a great insurance policy, so if something happens to Garcia, being he's a dual threat, that it's nice to know you have a guy that can come in, and I hate to use the term, and Matt probably will hate me for saying this, but a game manager. I think that Flynn's more of a game manager. I hate that term, but I can't think of a better way to describe Flynn versus Garcia.
Why would Matt kill you for using that term? Because you don't like it?
I don't know. I was just saying that.
Dave, I'm very upset. Very upset with you. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, I'll go to timeout right now.
But I'll say this, guys. Like, and Rene, just one thing to note, like for ECU this year, in my opinion, I think you'll see this team. This is going to be a team that improves as the year goes on. They might, early in the season, you might see a product that's unfinished. It's a type of team. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of new faces, but there is talent. And I think a lot of people, when you read all, the magazines and whatnot, it's kind of underestimated talent, but there is talent. And I think it just might take a little bit of time, to come together.
Kyle has said it many times, and I will give you props, Kyle. I know this is like the Eagles, the hell freezes over because I'm giving you props, but he makes a great point. It's going to be a tall task for the Michigan game, but week 2 and week 3 are going to define maybe not the season, but the trajectory of how do you get to a bowl game. When you have week 2 home against Marshall, week 3 on the road against App State, those 2 games, Rene, are really tough right behind that Michigan game. You got to win 1 or 2, but man, if you could win both of those games, that sets you up pretty the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I'm probably not supposed to say this, but what the hell? It's 11. Well, I don't even know what time it is. I'll be doing my homework because a little birdie told me I'll be in Greenville September 9th. So I'm looking forward to that game. Looking forward to that game.
We got a tailgate with us, Rene. We're right outside the stadium with your buddy Patrick Johnson. We're not too far from PJ.
Well, I will say this. I will definitely say hi to you guys. So,
okay.
All right.
For sure.
All right. We'll have the inside scoop. Well, Rene, before we let you go, I know it's hard to believe over an hour, but I appreciate the visit goes by way fast every time you come on. We have fun. Maybe one time we can do with some pirate beverages, but can you tell us what you got coming up and how can people follow your work?
Yeah, so obviously Twitter, Rene Ingoglia. I'm on Instagram now because I guess you have to be. Facebook, I got a Facebook page that I'm trying to push out there. I have a couple Facebook pages, but my one ESPN one where I'm going to try to put behind the scenes content on there this year of my travels, of stuff going on in the booth before the game, during the game, all just kind of behind the scenes stuff. Try to push that out there for people. They seem to like that. And obviously that Facebook page is just Rene Ingoglia, very easy to find. And then this Saturday night, really big high school game, number third-ranked team in the nation, IMG Academy from Florida, playing the number 10th ranked team, St. Joe's Prep here in Philadelphia. In this game, guys, quickly, there's over 30 players from both teams that are 3 stars or above.
Oh, wow.
The number 1 ranked player in the nation, Ellis Robinson. He's number 1 in the ESPN 300. He's a defensive back from IMG. Shocker, he's already committed to Georgia, but he's a 5-star. He's got a 5-star teammate by the name of David Stone, big defensive tackle. He's actually going to commit during our game, so who knows where he's going to go, but a ton of talent in this game. So that's Saturday night on ESPN at ESPN2 at 7 o'clock. And then, as I said, week 1, Friday, September 1st, it's really a standalone game. I don't think there's much on at that time. Friday night, 7 p.m., ACC Network. The Battle of Miamis. Miami of Ohio is going to play Miami, Florida, in the ACC. So that'll be a fun. That's actually a really good opening week game because Chuck Martin's group at Miami of Ohio always play tough. They don't shy away from tough opponents, and obviously Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes need to bounce back after last year. We'll see what Tyler Van Dyke does. And they went out transfer portal recruiting 5-star. Totally revamped their offensive line, did the Hurricanes, which needed a lot of help. So that should be a fun game. And again, that's Friday night, September 1st, ACC Network at 7 p.m.
Hey, Rennie, quickly, get the word out for us. This Monday, me and Bubba debut on a new show called The Coach's Kid. Each week, we're going to be talking to a famous head coach's son or daughter. Week 1, we're starting off with Tommy Bowden. We already recorded it. We discuss, growing up as the son of Bobby Bowden, coaching against Bobby Bowden in the Bowden Bowl, coaching with Bobby Bowden. So the Coach's Kids, new project,
awesome.
Going to have some national appeal.
Well, make sure you put it on social media, get it out there, and obviously I'll get it out there for you guys the best I can. That sounds like a great show.
All right.
Thank
you, Rennie.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you. Have a great weekend.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rennie. 1 minute, man.
You got it.
All right, guys. Love Rennie. He's the best, and that's why he's on that big network, the worldwide leader, ESPN. Guys, I know we've got an interview coming up with Pete Medhurst, one of our friends who's been with us for a long time. With you and Matt, did a great job with him, recorded that earlier. But do you have any other thoughts before we go to that interview?
Pete Medhurst from Navy. Seems like I always miss him whenever you guys interview him.
Yeah,
I haven't talked to Pete in 2 years.
No, he had to go to Dublin, Ireland.
He was he flew out to Dublin yesterday. So with that very tight schedule, Matt and I recorded with him. What was that, Monday, Matt?
Yeah, it sounds right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's just interesting to me. It's just weird. I haven't talked to him so long. Very entertaining dude. I got nothing. I got nothing, guys. I don't know if you guys are coming. Are we coming back after the interview with Medhurst, or are we saying our goodbyes now?
Well, we can go ahead and wrap it up. But something of note about that interview, and Matt, I think probably knows where I'm going with this, and our viewers and listeners will hear this here in the next few minutes. But Pete voluntarily brought this up, and that was the search for our new play-by-play voice. Something came up, about how much he loved the Naval Academy. He said, and that was what kept him there. But he said, how much do I love East Carolina? And think highly of Greenville and the Pirates. He said 10 minutes before that position closed, I was still contemplating putting my name into the hat.
Wow.
Oh, wow. We'd love to have him.
Tell him he may still have an opportunity.
2024 Pete. Matt and I could put we can have, well, actually, Kyle, we can help us with the t-shirts. We can have Pete Medhurst 2024, right?
Well, he's got to have good memories of Greenville. Every time he's come here, they've won.
Like 70 points. Like, God.
Except last year, it was a close game. But, God,
Medhurst, Monroe / Bays 2024.
There you go.
I'll vote for that. That guy is always entertaining, and we have a good end with him. He'll definitely be on our show a lot. So he's already on our show, and he's not even the play-by-play voice for East Carolina. So he's always welcome in Greenville.
But speaking of play-by-play voices, we have submitted a request. Trying to line up a time with Jim Zoki, the interim play-by-play voice of East Carolina football. He has agreed to come on, so now we're just working out of time. Obviously, he's extremely busy, being hired so late. He's made multiple trips to Greenville and doing everything he can to familiarize himself with Mike Houston and this roster between now and next Saturday, nine days from now.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
and quickly, I wanted to make a comment here. Two guys passed away in the last 24 hours. I wanted to mention them both, and I can't believe me and Stevie didn't mention Terry last night. But
Terry Funk,
one of my heroes, guy that I think is one of the best to ever do it, world champion in the NWA in the 70s, and then won the world championship in ECW in the 90s. 20 years in between world championships. The hardcore legend, a guy that had the psychology of wrestling down to a science. You believed he was crazy. So R.I.P. to Terry Funk. Also, Matt, Terry Funk, good actor. You would know him from Roadhouse. You would know him from Over the Top. He did a few other movies. So
TV show Quantum Leap.
Yep. So R.I.P. to Terry Funk.
He was one of the bouncers, right, in Roadhouse?
Yeah,
he was and he was the bodyguard to the old man on Over the Top.
That is one of my favorite. Roadhouse is one of my favorite movies. It's a high school memory.
Roadhouse.
16. I think it was. Yeah, I was driving when that movie came out.
In '89. So how old you were in '89?
16.
So yeah, and then today, very sad news. Bray
That
Wyatt.
was weird. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it.
The Fiend. I preferred his original gimmick with the Wyatt family, but Bray was in his 30s and hadn't been on WWE television since February. Said he was having health issues, but died unexpectedly today. I don't know if they mean mental health or physical health things. And if I'm wrong, I will apologize later. I'm just speculating, and maybe I shouldn't. But to me, it sounds like maybe it was a suicide. But time will tell. But R.I.P. to Bray Wyatt, gone way too soon. And
it was very shocking. Yeah,
the grandson of Blackjack Mulligan, the son of Mike Rotunda, and the nephew of Barry Windham. A lot of people may not realize that.
That's right. I did know that. Yeah, sad. That one, both of them were shocking in different ways. You know, Terry Funk is a legend, so you don't want the legends to die.
Well, Terry had been sick for a while now, so I saw that coming. And Terry was 78, I believe. So,
yeah, he was getting up there.
Yeah, but very sad to see him go, but really shocking about Bray Wyatt, and thoughts and prayers to the Rotunda family.
No doubt. Matt, do you have anything before we pitch it to the interview?
All good, fellas. Good talking to you guys. Looking forward to the Navy interview here, and catch up with you guys later.
All right, and one final thing. Want to make? How about that? Thank you, Bubba. Congrats to EC Women's Soccer, 4-0 winners over George Mason tonight at Johnson Stadium. I don't know if they beat that record. I think it was over 1,100 last year when they hosted
1,300 for Duke, and Coach Gary Higgins in that excellent interview that Matt had with he and Abby Soa here just within the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Definitely go back and check that out because we're just 3 games into the season. Excellent.
Kenneth continuing contributing to the show in positive ways. Bray died of heart complications from COVID. I buy half of that. They're wanting to put COVID again on everything again. So anyway,
but the Pirates are now 1-1-1. Lost the season opener to Florida down in Gainesville 2-0. Then 0-0 against North Florida, and then tonight a much needed offensive explosion, 4-0 in soccer. That's quite a blowout.
Yeah, and also, but guys, they're finished second in the East Division of the American. And glad they have divisions. We've been talking about that ad nauseum with conference realignment. But
hey, you guys
congratulations!
Think about this. Oregon State, East Carolina in baseball. If this happens.
Oh man, I would love that. Corvallis. Oh my gosh, that would be talk about a trip to go to for sure.
And then, obviously, a few nights ago, I guess Monday, we visited with Aaron McMahon, taking a look at the Michigan Wolverines. He is their beat writer for the Ann Arbor News and MLive.com. Also, the Wolverine Confidential podcast. So definitely go back and check that out. He was an excellent guest, and very appreciative of us inviting him to come on. Reached out after the fact, and
yes, he was.
Hey, if you guys are in the press box next Saturday, and be sure to stop and say hello. And then also we caught up with, just another sports podcast where myself, Kyle, and Stevie, the primary host of that show, and Matt Semenzo, I guess just the three of them, rather. I was just producing, but they took a look at the ECU defense. So talented, and we'll see how things come together on that side of the ball. And then also last night we caught up with Billy Embody, SMU's beat writer for On 3 Sports. So a lot of good content. Absolute Empowerment with Jeff Connors will make its return, because I know we were discussing that on a recent show.
Right.
But it will make its return Monday, September 4th, when Terrence Copper, T-Cop, former Pirate wide receiver, and Kansas City Chief, New Orleans Saint, etc., will come on to talk Pirate football, among other things, with his former strength and conditioning coach.
And Matt is lining up a big guest for us. But you're going to tell him who you're going to get on when you meet her next month? Matt's leaving me hanging after I pitch it to him.
Who am I getting, Kyle? Sorry, I'm not.
I don't. Hey, you said you're meeting her
rum?
next month. You tell me, brother.
To be continued. We'll leave it at that one, right? To be continued.
You have no idea what I'm talking about.
For next month?
You said you're meeting her next month. You text me today.
Oh, I'm meeting Kyle's girlfriend. Yes, that's right. At a yep, exactly. Danielle Harris, right, Kyle?
Correct, Danielle Harris. I wish she was my girlfriend. Danielle, Matt is meeting Danielle Harris at a HorrorCon next month, so I'm tasking him with the responsibility of getting her on the podcast.
Imagine that.
You can do it, Matt. You can do it, Matt. I believe you can do it. Just tell her that you're a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. Tell her I've been a fan of her since Halloween 4, and it's not creepy because I was younger than her when she was in that movie. So she needs to come on a sports podcast around. It'd be great to have her on in October.
Right, especially the end of October near Halloween.
Yep.
But by the way,
for you, Kyle, I'll do it.
Good.
Tomorrow night, myself, we also have what a legend, North Carolina High School Athletic Association Hall of Famer, Coach Harold Robinson. We'll do the Martin County football game. We're hosting Aiden Grifton, the Chargers, and Paul Cornwell. I know Bubba had a chance to catch up with Coach Cornwell, and I had a chance to catch up with Coach Mike Sartain, making his home debut, and that's tomorrow night. Airtime is at 6:40. Want to give a shout out to Bubba, and also I want to give a shout out to Sir Charles Smith, who'll be on site engineering. That's going to be a great time tomorrow night. Friday night at Friday Night Football, starting at 6:40 right here on the Sports Objective Network. And guys, I know at some point maybe you can help me with the. We'll do also the halftime.
Yeah,
well.
we are. We're going to we're going to get together. We're going to have a Pirate preview recorded as the season gets going for halftime each week for the Martin County football games. And Dave, I might get with you on something else too that I have in mind to participate on the Friday nights I can for those games. I'll get with you on that. And we need to get the word out. Let everybody know. And Dave, did you get any flyers, man? We got to get this posted up at Porky so people know where to find Martin County football in Martin County.
We do need to do that. Yeah, we do need to do that.
Sports Objective. This is if you look, hey, if you're listening to this, you live in Martin County, get the word out that Martin County football is being streamed on the Sports Objective on YouTube and Facebook each and every Friday night.
And if you're part of the Aiden Grifton program, I certainly shared the link and told Coach Cornwell that he and his assistants, et cetera, can pass that link around, share it with their parents and so forth. But if you're tuned in and you're an Aiden Grifton Charger fan and supporter of that program, or just love Eastern North Carolina high school football, we would appreciate any help you can provide sharing that link and letting folks know they can listen to that game on the Sports Objective YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I just think for Martin County, it's just in that area, it's just a matter of getting people to know that's where they can find the game.
Yep.
I think people will listen once they know where to find it.
That's right. It's a different, basically what's going on is with our show is obviously it's on Facebook and YouTube. It's a different way of consuming high school football, but we're doing that so we can get a broader reach, and we our signal, our very own friend of the show, Patrick Johnson, bragged, by the way, guys, about how good our show sounded. He was listening around the state, different friends calling games, and he was bragging about how good, being that it was high school football. So appreciate PJ, and a lot of people are saying that. That's the one thing we just got to get the word out, like you said.
And throughout the 2023 football season, anytime we have, any question whatsoever, be it high school, college, NFL, and as it pertains to officiating and the rules of the game, we will call on Justin Butts, and he is our officiating rules guru.
Justin, I need all the help I can get, so that'll be fantastic. You can just chime in and help me out whenever there's some calls that we're not sure about. So anyway, all right, guys, Bubba, do you want to, I guess we can go to it now. Kyle, thank you so much. I'll get out of here as well. And Bubba, I know you guys had a chance to sit down with Pete Medhurst right before he was boarding the plane in Dublin.
Yeah, Matt Simmons and I caught up with him. He was still in the States, but
right.
Headed out to Dublin today. But we caught up with him on Monday afternoon to talk about that matchup. Brian Newberry's debut against the 13th ranked Fighting Irish in a sold out stadium in Dublin, Ireland, and it should be quite the scene and first game of the 2023 college football season, at least in the FBS ranks. And let's go to the beginning of that interview right now. And right now on the Inside Slant, very excited to be joined by the play-by-play voice of the Navy midshipman, Pete Medhurst, as we preview the Navy Notre Dame game in Dublin. Pete, welcome back in.
Always good to be with you guys, and happy football New Year.
Yeah, glad that it's week 0. Finally have some college football. 7 games taking place this weekend. Obviously, Navy making that 7 or so hour flight across the pond, taking on Notre Dame, I believe, for the 96th time in program history. Last year, close call in Baltimore. That furious comeback, 35-32. Notre Dame was the final. And this year, the Fighting Irish, obviously, very high expectations, maybe even a dark horse in some folks' opinion to maybe contend for a playoff spot, and they're bringing in Sam Hartman, so a year 2 of Marcus Freeman. But speaking of head coaches, and Brian Newberry taking over for Ken Niumatalolo, how's that transition going, and what can you tell us as we head into game 1 of the Newberry era?
Well, I mean, what a great opponent to make your debut against. I mean, if you win the game, you're the toast of the college football world. Coming up on Saturday. So, look, I mean, I've got it's just like I told y'all about Mike when he took over down there. I mean, I know Brian's going to do a good job here. Ultimately, what's going to make us sink or swim is the business of college football. Right now, the business of college football is trying to desperately to go to a model that might as well be called professional. And, there's still standards at the service academies. There's academic standards at Notre Dame, places like Wake Forest, where, they don't necessarily, reduce those academic standards. And every one of those teams has found a way to still somehow manage to play a good level of college football. And I would expect that level to stay there under Brian Newberry and his staff. I trust these men implicitly. I like what they've done with the staff. And, the players have had nothing but glowing things to say about what has happened with Coach, because just like when Kenya Matalolo filled the shoes of Paul Johnson, Brian Newberry now knows, you're filling the shoes of the man that won more games than anybody else at the Naval Academy. And the expectation by this coaching staff is to still win every game. And that's what they're going to Dublin to do on Saturday. And that's to try and knock off one of the nation's nationally ranked powers.
Pete, Coach Ken, he was there for such a long time. He had such a great record of success with Navy. Obviously, Brian Newberry steps into the head coaching role. He has been on staff for a while. Tremendous defensive coordinator. What are some of the differences you've observed, this offseason between the two styles, Coach Ken and Coach Newberry?
I'll be honest with you. I don't believe in terms of their styles there's a lot of difference. There's an incredible accountability. There's a feeling of family. Those were two staples under Ken Niumatalolo. If anything, I mean, philosophically, there's some new concepts that are being introduced to complement triple option concepts. But other than that, there's a reason why Ken Niumatalolo hired Brian Newberry. Loved his football acumen. Obviously, he's a great man of character. And those are two things that you have to be a successful coach at the United States Naval Academy. And I think Brian's time here, he has shown, certainly on his side of the football, that his acumen for the game is top notch. I mean, there's a reason why Power 5 schools were, trying to acquire him to be their defensive coordinator. Some of them, with multiple commas in their offers. And, he loves Annapolis. And he wants to stay here. He sees himself as someone that could stay here for an awful long time. Just like Coach Niumatalolo did, just like Coach Welsh did back in the 70s before he went to Virginia. So I think that's ultimately, if you're a Navy fan, that's what you like to hear, a guy that is bought into your job, that he's not, a guy that's looking to use Navy as a stepping stone to get somewhere else. Brian's already had that opportunity, and he's chosen to stay at the Naval Academy.
While their style overall is very similar, one thing that is going to be different, as Coach Newberry mentioned on our show back a few months ago, early in the summer, is the approach to the offense. Yes, they're still going to run the option, but there are going to be some different variations there. And he's bringing in Grant Chestnut from Kennesaw State to do so. Tell us about how that transition's gone. And then I know off the air we were discussing the quarterback battle. So where does that stand?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see both guys that have gotten the bulk of work in camp so far, Ty Lovatai and Blake Horvath. You're going to see both of those guys on Saturday. I'm convinced of that. Watching them both in practice, they have adjusted to the additional concepts. As I've told people, the fullback dive's not going anywhere. We got two really good fullbacks in Daba Fofana, Alex Teksha. They're going to be terrific. You're going to utilize those guys because they're two very good football players. We've still got really fast slot backs. We're going to utilize those guys. Kind of stinks to lose Mikael Hayward to Appalachian State, but he's a great football player, and good luck to him down with App State. But we've got plenty of kids that are ready for the opportunity to play at slot, and we've got a quarterback room that's pretty deep. It really is. I mean, they've done a great job in recruiting. We're lucky to have a couple of veterans in Ty Lovatai and Xavier Arline who have played, who can go in there, and they're not going to be wowed by the moment. The other quarterbacks, the only strike against them is they don't have any game experience. They're very talented though, and that's what you're looking for. Is ultimately, talent wins games, and if you don't have it, you don't win. They've done very good at this position. Ivan Jasper's done a great job in getting them ready to play. I'll be excited to see what they do coming up on Saturday.
Pete, you look back at that Notre Dame game from last year, and what a game it was. Navy actually outgunned them in terms of total yards, and also held Notre Dame to just 66 yards rushing, which, again, going back to Newberry, that's pretty damn impressive, Pete. I would suspect that Notre Dame's going to try to run the football in this game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got a great offensive tackle and alt out there. I mean, that's a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Estime is a terrific talent at running back. And let's face it, you have to acknowledge Sam Hartman. I know A.T. Perry's not out there in South Bend with him, but you have to acknowledge Sam Hartman. Your secondary's got to stay disciplined and back, where they're supposed to be. So you would figure Alt and Estime are really going to be, an emphasis on what Notre Dame is going to do. I mean, Marcus coached with Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. Luke is a huge believer in the run game, being physical. And look, let's face it. I mean, as good as those teams were at Cincinnati, the offensive line talent at Notre Dame's even better. So he's going to look to take advantage of that, I'm sure. And look, let's face it. If you can run the football effectively, that's just going to make life even easier for Sam Hartman during the course of this season. The question ultimately is who at Notre Dame turns into his A.T. Perry. Can Navy get pressure on him like they did in the second half, where John Marshall just abused Notre Dame in the second half last year. That's ultimately going to be the challenge for Navy, is getting pressure on Sam Hartman when he goes back to pass in this game, because as we've all seen, with plenty of time to throw, Sam Hartman is a marksman out there, and he is one of college football's best at that position.
Tell us about some of the guys on the defense and make this defense have such high expectations, and who are some of the leaders at each level?
Well, we're deep up front. We might have the best defensive line in the American, with Donald Berniard, Jacob Busick, and Clay Cromwell. Cromwell and Berniard were so good, both playing the nose, that they moved Cromwell over so they could both be on the field at the same time. Josh Reed has really stepped up at position over with Busick. So we're deep there and we're good there. Linebackers, our 2 middle linebackers are terrific players. Will Harbor and Colin Ramos. Those guys are, again, I believe in terms of middle backers, they potentially are as good as anybody in the American. It's where, what do we do at the striker position, which is kind of like our playmaking position on defense where John Marshall vacates, with Xavier McDonald and Jackson Sanders. Those are 2 guys that are going at that position. They've got a chance to play, and we'll see. I mean, if they even give Navy half the production that John Marshall did, the mids are going to be okay. You've got a secondary that's got experience. Rayon Lane is one of the best DBs in the American, and looking forward to another big season from him. Ultimately, with us, can our secondary stay healthy? It got beat up a little bit last year, and the good news is some of those guys that are playing got to play because the secondary got beat up. And one of the guys that was really good for a short period of time last year before he got hurt was Deshaun Peel. He's back and ready to go at a corner spot. So, I mean, you got a lot of guys on the defensive side that have played, and that's one of the reasons why Brian Newberry and defensive coordinator PJ Volker are so excited about what potentially this defense can be this coming season.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating matchup for me. When you look at Sam Hartman versus Newberry, Hartman is a legitimate Heisman candidate, tremendous player. He can beat you in so many ways, Pete. He can beat you with his feet. He can beat you with his arm. So I'm really looking forward to see how Newberry chooses to defend him. I still have nightmares about how Newberry defended us last season. Unfortunately, I won't say a word about that. But he's excellent at, Newberry's tremendous at game planning and then implementing that game plan and trying to shut people down.
What he does, and he's not married to a specific formation or philosophy. It's not, we're going to show up, and we're always going to line up this way because our people are better than yours. We're not Clemson. We're not Georgia. We just can't line up with our 11 guys in the same formation every week and go get you that way. But yeah, I mean, what he does from a game planning standpoint, and look, just like Brian was at Navy as a defensive coordinator, I think PJ Volker is a rising star in this profession. I kid him all the time right now, and I'm not really kidding, but I told him, I said, if you ever get a head coaching job, I'm coming to work in your recruiting department. Because I would work for either one of those guys every day of the week. They're 2 of the most dynamic football coaches I've ever met in my life. You have one-on-one conversations with these guys where you're not interviewing them, but you're just talking football. You learn, but you get the game from a different perspective. You get it from how they see it, because the best coaches see the game in a way that not everybody else does. They game plan for it in a way that not everybody else does. That's what separates, in my mind, the really good football coaches from the guy that's, happy to go 6-6, make a couple of bowl games. He goes to all the luncheons and everything, and everybody shakes your hand. Hey, coach, are we going to Bermuda for that bowl game this year? Are we going to, Tennessee for this bowl game? Or are we going to the Gator Bowl? Whatever. These are guys that see the game in a different way that make them difference makers. And that's why I'm so high on this staff that they've been able to put together. I think when you talk offensive football with Grant Chestnut, you see a guy that, he thinks about the game in a beyond the basic level. I mean, you know this, Matt. I mean, if you just try to attack basically in football now, you can't win. You're not going to beat good teams just being basic in football. It's what can you do specific to stopping that team every week that gives your team a chance to win. And that's where I think these men make a difference. It's just like when Mike took over down there. Mike thinks about this game in a little bit of a different way. I mean, go back and watch his teams at James Madison and how they performed against Power 5 teams. You know, you got Virginia Tech people out here that, you know, making fun of James Madison and everything. I want to ask the Virginia Tech people, what the hell have you won lately? So, you know, I look at what Mike has done at James Madison and now at East Carolina and what they've been able to do at James Madison after Mike left because of what he built. And, you know, I mean, that's why coaches like that are always going to be in demand, because they can come into any situation to make a difference. And that's why I think Brian Newberry and his staff are going to do just fine here at Navy.
Appreciate your time this afternoon, Pete. A couple more questions for you. First games, you know, season openers can be very intriguing. You know, things that, you know, typically may not be the case do play a role. And special teams are certainly always important, but they're magnified even more in a season opening game. I think back last year, East Carolina, had it not been for special teams, would have beaten number 13 NC State.
Yes.
But you know, what can you tell us about the special teams matchup in this game?
Hey, you know that. I mean, and look, Owen Daffer can kick the football a mile. Okay, we saw that in the game in Annapolis 2 years ago when that ball would have been good from 70 that he hit to beat us at the buzzer. Okay, think about that. There were two opportunities. I mean, if they should have beaten us, they should have beaten us. If he makes kicks, they beat us. They beat NC State. Season looks completely different. And you know what? My guy Keaton Mitchell, who's turning up at Ravens camp right now, it probably is a draft pick if they're an even more high-profile team than last year. That's how I feel about the way their season went down there. Their season should have produced even fruitier results for them. Should have been much more fruitful than what they got out of that. But you're right. Special teams make such a huge difference. We have the best punter in the conference. Riley Reithman, no doubt about it. The guy kicks missiles. He's going to be fine. I think our kicking game is going to be fine. We're experienced in both places. That helps us. And ironically enough, if it ever got down to it, if football ever wanted to get creative and have like a long driving contest or a putting contest, our punter Riley Reithman's a scratch golfer too. So we could beat you in a creative tiebreaker way if you wanted to do that. But I believe we're going to be fine on special teams. The question ultimately, you know, is can you snap the ball? You know, is your field goal PA2 unit? You know, we've had so many good long snappers at the Naval Academy for the last 15 years. You almost take it for granted that the operation has been so good. But again, very high on our special teams because of the experience that we have with Riley Reithman and Evan Warren at those positions.
So, Pete, you're obviously making another trip back to Dublin. I'm very jealous right now. I'm not going to lie. It's a bucket list trip for me. Pete, what do you have planned? You know, put football aside for a minute. What do you have planned? I know, you know, we talked a little bit about, you know, eating a lot of shepherd's pie, maybe a few pubs. You know, what's on the docket for you?
Appreciate your time this afternoon, Pete. A couple more questions for Pete. I'll give you a second reason. Eastern North Carolina barbecue.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Come on. Look, I told y'all. Look, wait a minute. Hold on. Stop right there. You don't have to entice me with food because East Carolina and Memphis are 1 and 1A in the American Athletic Conference when it comes to food in the press box. Nobody else is close. It's Memphis and East Carolina. There are no substitutes. You must have press food at both of these places. It's far and away the best meal you'll ever have in your life.
That's great. Bubba, go ahead.
Really appreciate your time this afternoon, Pete, and coming on the show on a moment's notice before you fly out in a couple days. Tell folks how they can tune into the game and then also, you know, how they can follow you on social media.
Yep, very easy on whatever you want to call it, X. What's up, Muskie? X. It's great now. At Pete Medhurst. Instagram is Pete_Medhurst. You can even find me on TikTok at Pete on Sports now. I venture into all kinds of different genres of social media. That's how we have to make our existence now. And obviously, folks on Sunday can go to the Naval Academy website, navysports.com, and click on the listen link to get our radio broadcast. As I said, Notre Dame's radio not going. We are. So we'll be there on Saturday live to describe all the action from Aviva Stadium coming up on Saturday.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pete. As always, we appreciate your time. I hope you have a great trip to Dublin. Good luck to the Naval Academy, and look forward to catching up with you later on in the season.
You got it. See you guys in November.
Take care, my friend.
See ya.
That is the play-by-play voice of the Naval Midshipman, and that is, of course, Pete Medhurst. A few technical difficulties there at the end. There were 6 minutes of that interview that were missing, but if you'd like to hear that interview in its entirety, including those last 6.5 minutes, you can go to our YouTube channel. We'll upload that as a standalone interview, about 25 or 26 minutes in length. But appreciate his time as always, Pete Medhurst. Hopefully the midshipman will be able to put a scare and then some into number 13 Notre Dame, as the Middies are nearly a 3-touchdown dog in Dublin. Also appreciative of Rene Ingoglia spending a little over an hour of his time with us, as he is up in New Jersey, not too far from Philly, calling a big high school game in Philly this weekend, top 15 or even top 10 matchup. So definitely check that out on the ESPN family and networks. But for Kyle Barber, Matt Semenza, and Dave Richmond, I'm Bubba Rosenbaum. You've been watching and listening to The Sports Objective. Be sure to follow us on social media, on X at The Sports OBJ, on Instagram and TikTok at The Sports Objective. Like and follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll talk to you soon here on The Sports Objective. And as always, go Pirates.